What's good, Elijah Wood? It's time for another rollicking installment of Collection Connection here on your home for listening to me prattle on about music. Good show, Ponsonby. We find two records, the less obviously related, the better, and challenge you to guess the unusual quirk or facet that they have in common. It's a little bit autobiographical, a little bit album review, a little bit trivia game, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, but mostly it's just an excuse to talk about records. So what is cooking for today? I'll be talking about an album often credited with creating the post-rock genre, the evolutionary and revolutionary fourth album from Talk, Spirit of Eden, released in 1988. From there, we'll move on to the third album from Manchester's Everything Everything, which came out in 2015 and is called Get to Heaven. There's a suggestion of something there about idyllic places with heaven and Eden, but let's don't overcomplicate things. We've only just begun, and you might have already sniffed out the connection. If so, put your guess down in the comments, which will make you eligible for the fabulous prize of us acknowledging that you got it right. But first, let's reveal the connection between the previous pair of albums. On the Plastic Soundwave Cult, that is my brother's channel, the guy who I play the game with. On Monday, he talked about Spirit of Eden, and he had connected that to Erasure's Wild. And the connection was that both albums were the last album of the 80s put out by both bands. I thought that was a nebulous enough connection that nobody was going to guess it, but what do I know? Because Murdoch, over on Murdoch's Music Minute, he got it right. I'm impressed. I thought that was way too slippery a thing, but hey, congratulations. You can catch I think his latest video where he's talking about the Monks, which was a good video about an old kind of early garage punk-ish kind of band from the 1960s. You can catch that on Murdoch's Music Minute. Congratulations, Murdoch. And with that, let's get on with the show. All right, so Eric talked about Spirit of Eden in his last episode. This is considered a classic album now, but it totally flopped at the time it was released, enough so that EMI, they ended up parting ways with EMI, and their last album, Laughingstock, was released on Polydor Records. After that, Mark Hollis, the leader of Talk, did put out one more album in the late 90s, just called Mark Hollis, that I would put stylistically sort of between Color of Spring and Spirit of Eden. The sonics and kind of the airiness of Spirit of Eden is present on that album, but it pulls back and feels a little more song structured. They kind of went wider and wider with the experimentalism and so far into minimalism that by the time of Laughingstock, which is also considered a classic, but I don't think on quite the same level as Spirit of Eden, and I don't like it as much as Spirit of Eden. I would say, other than Ascension Day, which is as good as anything that they've ever done on that album. It lacks a little bit. It's almost taking minimalism as the first step, and any note, any word, anything spoken just feels like it's got to be the exact perfect thing, and it's almost so antiseptic and quiet and afraid to kind of break into anything that I feel like Laughingstock falls off a little bit. At least Spirit of Eden has a song like Desire, which does break into kind of a big, noisy chorus. It's not afraid to make some noise. And as much as I love the album, and I do love the album, it's a great record. Like Eric, I like Color of Spring, its predecessor, more, but like him, it's my favorite album of all time, so anything is going to be worse, I guess, in your opinion, than your favorite album of all time, because that's why it's your favorite album of all time. I have not only my remastered copy here, where the text is a little bit different than it was on the original release. This was a 1997 remaster, one of the very, very first remasters I ever got that I was even really ever aware of, very early on. This was an album that you could tell was meant to be sort of sonically as there as it could be, as perfectly represented as it could be. And so I believe Color of Spring and Spirit of Eden were the very first maybe remasters that I ever bought. So I have that version, but I also do have it on vinyl. I bought it way back when nobody was buying records in the late 90s, and I bought it as an aesthetic. So here it is. It's framed down in my basement along with some other album covers that I thought were cool album covers back when LPs seemed dead. But yeah, it's got some great stuff for only being 6 songs long, and being very long songs that thematically sort of burble up out of this soup of noise. The way that they recorded it was very different. They went in less with songs than they did with a lot of recording, and kind of pieced together songs out of these recordings, is my understanding of it anyway. And you can kind of hear it in the sort of the ambience and the soundscapeness that each song just kind of heads up out of this primordial ooze and becomes a song. So I do feel like there are songs on it, although, again, the record label did not see a single. And Talk were like, yeah, I don't think that there is a single. But they did end up releasing one single. I Believe in You, or is it I Don't Believe in You? I Believe in You. I Don't Believe in You is a track off of Color Spring. I Believe in You. But they did it in an edited form where they basically kind of cut off the beginning and the end of the song and just focused on that more song section. Band wasn't real happy with it, but I think it was a concession. But the album tanked super hard. But these days, shoot, it's a jewel in EMI's crown now. So I'm sure that they're pleased as punch that they have it. My understanding of the story is that they kind of got a carte blanche to make the album. I think EMI thought Color Spring was a great album, had some forward momentum, didn't necessarily chart quite as high as It's My Life, but they felt like this is going to be a great band. And they went off in secret and spent a year kind of recording this album without oversight. And when they presented it to EMI, they were like, what the hell is this? And although they did, to their credit, they did release it. It did predictably super tank, and it's the kind of album that took hindsight for people to really appreciate. And as I mentioned, is often credited as ground zero for post-rock, which it's hard to even describe, but it sort of takes rock instrumentation into sort of more soundscapey, less song-based areas. The album's been called kind of a crossroads between jazz and ambient, and all these things are true. It's really hard to categorize. You almost had to come up with a new category for Spirit of Eden. So post-rock, there you go. And on this particular occasion, I happen to know a lot more about Spirit of Eden, the album that I'm connecting to, than the album that I am connecting with, which in this case is Everything's Get to Heaven. This was released in 2015, but not until 2016 in the US. It is the only album, I believe, in the Everything catalog that has gotten a US release. A smaller label gave it a pressing in the US, and that is the only one to date to do so. And this is Everything is also a band that has made no waves in the US whatsoever, so it's not surprising. But they are an English band out of Manchester. I believe they're a 4-piece, and I had heard a lot from certain friends of mine that their first album was fantastic, but it wasn't anything I ever followed up on. And specifically the single Photoshop Handsome, they said is a great song. And I heard that a lot, but I never heard the song because they were never being played here in the US. I never went out looking for it. And it wasn't until their third album, that somebody had posted a link, I think, to a song called Regret, which I thought was interesting but not great. But that sort of then linked into the song Distant Past, which did grab my attention. And I thought, okay, now I'm interested. And there was even another single, I believe it was a single, but the track No Reptiles, that I liked quite a bit. And I've come to like Regret more. Like last week, I mentioned that Erasure's 2,000 Miles irks me a little bit because of the Pretender song by the same name. Regret happens to be the name of one of my very, very favorite songs by New Order. And so the fact that they have a song named Regret has that same sort of regret to it is something I hold against the song, I guess. But I hadn't listened to the album in its entirety a whole lot, and the version that I have is actually an expanded sort of deluxe edition that has 17 tracks on it. The original album contained 11 tracks. I may have been better off with just the 11-track album, even though some of the bonus tracks are quite good. When it's an hour to listen to an album, I find that I don't often have an hour to sit and listen to an album. And by the time I could have listened to its entirety, I've moved on to something else, or the kids have picked something to listen to in the car or something. So I just didn't get overly familiar with the album. It's a long one in its deluxe form. But listening to it, I did play it a couple times in the last couple of days. It is a little relentless. I think that was one thing that I had retained from earlier listenings. A little relentless, but my understanding is that they were looking for an album to tour behind that would pump some energy into the shows. Apparently their previous album, Arc, had done well for them, but was kind of a drag to play live. I think it was maybe a little bit more sedate. I haven't heard it, but that's my understanding. And so these songs, most of them really pump, which can be good, but also can be a little exhausting to sit and listen to for an hour. But Distant Past is great. No Reptiles is a really good song. And I enjoyed the other ones that I heard. Maybe Blast Doors. I'm still working out, trying to put the names of the songs to the songs. But it was good. I should listen to it more and maybe even invest in other albums. This is the only Everything album that I ever bought. I didn't end up following up on them because I wasn't listening to this one that much. So that opens the door. Maybe I'll get that first album, Man Alive, with Photoshop Handsome on it. Finally check that out. Stylistically, they're another band that's kind of hard to press down to a single style. They like pop, but they think of themselves as a rock band. And they also try to not sound like anybody else. And so there are various electronic elements. It feels very studio put together, which is not a bad thing. I like some music like that very much. But it feels very crafted, one of those kind of albums. It feels smart even though I don't have the lyrics down. I think it uses a lot of wordplay and things like that. So it would be interesting to dig into a little bit. I should definitely do that if I find the time. But short of that, yeah, weird album cover, kind of off-putting. But Everything from 2015. And I'm connecting that to Talk, Spirit of Eden. So if you think you figured out that super tricky connection, go ahead and leave that down in the comments, and the first right answer will get a shout out in Eric's next video over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult on Monday. So with that, I thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Good show, Ponsonby.